Welcome back to the Lore Loom, where we turn powerful books into simple stories you'll actually remember. If you're new here, hit subscribe. We share a new story every day. Today's story is about a fortress that survived 3 years of war. It didn't fall to siege towers or fire. It fell because the enemy sent back 4 captured soldiers, alive and fed. And the one man who saw the danger in that kindness couldn't bring himself to say it loud enough. Davan knelt in the mud beside a campfire that had almost burned out. He was speaking to no one, putting words together for a letter that would never be sent. "I want to tell you how the fortress fell," he said. "Not the version the generals will write. The real one. It started the day our enemy gave us a gift." The fortress sat on a mountain pass between 2 kingdoms that had been bleeding each other dry for longer than most of the soldiers could remember. 3 years of siege. The walls had cracks wide enough to fit a hand through. The grain stores were down to dust and weevils. General Maren had held it all that time. He trusted no one. Not the supply runners, not the scouts, not even Davan, who had served at his side since he was 16 years old. Davan remembered the second year. A messenger had arrived carrying sealed orders from their own capital. Reinforcements, 2 days out. Every officer wanted it to be true. Maren didn't. He sent 3 scouts to verify. 2 never came back. The third returned with an arrow in his shoulder and news that the messenger was a plant. The enemy had been waiting in the pass. 80 men slept safely that night because Maren refused to believe good news. But there were other nights. One winter, Davan woke to find Maren going through his trunk. Letters from his mother spread across the floor. A small wooden horse his father had carved when Davan was a boy. All of it handled and examined. Maren was looking for coded messages. He didn't find any. He never said sorry. Davan put everything back and closed the lid. That was the arrangement. You loved the man, and you accepted that he would never fully believe you. Then came the 3rd year. An enemy patrol captured 4 of Maren's scouts near the southern ridge. Everyone expected them back dead, or not at all. Instead, they walked through the gate 3 days later. Federal bandaged, carrying a letter. The letter was from the enemy commander, a woman named Sarah. She was requesting a parley. Davan stood behind Maren's chair when Sarah walked in. No escort, no weapons. A woman with dark braided hair and a blue cloak over light armor. She sat across from Maren the way you sit across from someone you've studied for a long time. She didn't posture. She didn't flatter. She looked at Maren like an equal. She told Maren the truth. Her supply lines were breaking. Her king kept sending more soldiers she couldn't feed. She was tired of writing letters to the families of dead men. "I can take this fortress," she said, "but I'll lose 1/3 of my people. You'll lose all of yours. I would rather not." Davan watched Maren's face. He had seen that face hold steady through ambushes, starvation, and the funerals of men who had followed him for 20 years. He had never seen it do what it did now. It softened, just barely, like a locked door left open half an inch. After Sarah left, Davan followed Maren to his quarters. He spoke carefully. He said the scouts could have been returned to soften them. That Sarah's honesty could be strategy shaped like honesty. That 3 years of holding this wall meant nothing if they opened it over one conversation. Maren listened. Then he said, "I heard you." And he shut the door. 2 days later, Maren called a war council. He proposed opening the northern pass for a mutual supply exchange. Fresh water from the valley for iron from the fortress stores. The first breach in their defenses in 3 years. The officers glanced at each other. Some nodded. They were hungry too. Davan stood up. He said it was too much, too fast. 1 return patrol and 1 honest conversation, and they were tearing open a wall that had held for 1,000 days. Maren looked at him the way he might look at a stranger. "You sound like me 10 years ago," he said. "I am tired of that man." He told Davan to leave the room. First time in 11 years. The northern pass opened. Carts rolled through for the first time in 3 years. Water barrels, grain sacks, Sarah's soldiers and Maren's soldiers standing 10 feet apart, watching each other move supplies. Nobody attacked. Nobody shouted. It looked like peace. Davan stood on the south wall that night. Not the north, where the exchange was happening. The south. He couldn't have explained why. Something about the way Sarah had sat in that chair. Too still. Like someone who already knew what came next. He stared at the dark tree line below and saw nothing. But his hands wouldn't stay still on the stone. The attack came at dawn. From the south. Sarah's forces poured through the tree line, while half of Maren's garrison was still posted at the northern pass, guarding a supply exchange that no longer mattered. It took 2 hours. The southern gate had been lightly held for 3 years because the cliffs made it nearly impossible to assault. Nearly. Davan found Maren standing alone in the courtyard when the fighting stopped. The general's sword was still in his hand. There was no one left to swing it at. He just stood there. Davan found Sarah outside the main hall. He expected gloating. A conqueror's grin. She looked exhausted. She told him she had meant the truce when she offered it. Every word. Her king had overruled her 3 days into the exchange and ordered the assault. She had used the trust she'd already built because she had no other way left. The betrayal wasn't the plan, she said. It grew out of something real. That's why he never saw it turn. Then Sarah offered a deal. Safe passage for every surviving soldier. All 100 of them. Out the gate, down the mountain, alive. But only if Davan signed a document declaring that General Maren had surrendered willingly. That the siege had ended in peaceful resolution. The document would become the permanent record of both kingdoms. 100 lives. In exchange for branding the man Davan had followed for 11 years as a coward in every history that would ever be written. Davan thought about the men on the wall. The ones who had been eating insects for 3 months. The ones who would rot in a prison camp if he said no. He sat down. He signed it. The garrison walked out at noon. 100 soldiers, thin and quiet, carrying what little they had. Maren was among them. He had read the document. Davan knew because the general walked past him at the gate without turning his head. Without a word. Without looking. 11 years. And Maren passed him like a stranger on a road. Davan stood at the open gate for a long time after that. He had saved Maren's life. He had also made a choice for him that Maren never agreed to. Kindness with a hidden cost. The same thing Sarah had done. The fortress had one relationship left inside its walls, and now that was broken too. Here's the interesting part. This whole story comes from a famous book called The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. It's inspired by the 12th chapter, about how a single well-timed act of honesty or generosity can bring down defenses that years of force never could. Our characters are made up, but the lesson is very real. If this idea grabbed you, the book goes much deeper. Link below. So what did this story teach us? One honest gesture can open a door that years of force never could. So be most careful when someone's kindness feels like relief. Think about it. Sarah didn't use weapons to break through. She returned 4 scouts alive. She admitted her own weakness. That one generous act reached Maren not because he was stupid, but because he was exhausted. 3 years of trusting nobody had hollowed him out. He wasn't fooled by Sarah's honesty. He wanted it to be true. And wanting is worse than being fooled, because you do it to yourself. Remember when Maren told Davan, "You sound like me 10 years ago. I'm tired of that man." That was the moment the fortress really fell, not when the soldiers came through the trees. Maren opened the gate because he couldn't stand being the person who never trusted anyone for one more day. So what should Maren have done? He should have tested Sarah's honesty slowly. Small exchanges. Verified promises. Gradual steps he could reverse if anything felt wrong. Real trust is built over time, through patterns, not purchased with one gift, especially when you're tired enough to want it to be true. What would you have done? Would you have signed that document? Look, most people don't have time to sit down and read a 400-page book. That's what this channel is for. We take the ideas and turn them into stories that actually stick with you. If that sounds useful, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. And I'm curious. Drop a comment. Was it Maren walking past Davan without a word that hit you hardest? Or was it the moment Sarah told Davan the truce had been real? I want to know. See you in the next story.